working in the field with arts and social impact. And we did a big mapping at the beginning. So we really tried to map out who is out in that field, who are the stakeholders. And stakeholders are not just NGOs working or artists working in the field of arts with social change. It's really about funders, bigger institutions, bigger arts institutions, artists, as I said, NGOs, all different kind of institutions, stakeholders in that field. And we actually asked them also, we didn't just map them out, we really asked them questions. What are your motivation? How do you measure impact? And one question was, what would you need most? And of course, everybody answered money. Money came as the first. We need resources, we are lacking, but I think that's true for many other different fields. The second answer was, we need actually collaboration. We are fragmented. We feel like our motivation is quite the same, but we are not connected. We are disconnected. We feel quite separated and alone. That was one, and actually they gave us the best argument to start this off. The second argument is because we know that art, even though it's very often seen as something nice and emotional, like what we did yesterday, and maybe a nice decoration at the end of the day, no, it's not true. We know, especially in these times of crisis, when it comes to topics like democracy, when it comes to how we make people seen, how we hear their voices, because they're never been heard. So the arts are a beautiful tool for being a bridge builder, making people seen, making people visible, making people heard. The other thing in these times of crisis, hope, resilience, healing. We need a lot of healing, as we all know how to do. I think the arts approach can give us quite a good tool to do so and to use in a proper way. And we've seen many things. The last topic I mentioned, and there are many more, is the environmental topic. We just recently started a big program. You will hear more together with another organization. We brought in famous artists, but also small community arts initiatives into that field. And I just gave the easy example of how we emotionally onboard to the topic, that we finally get to some action and not just be aware. Aware we are all. And very often we talk into the same bubble. Arts can help us to communicate much more broader. So these were the main, let's say, motivation. You hear more about it. But honestly speaking, even though, and Hilti at the same time was working on the most important ingredient, as we said, in all these initiatives, the teaching artists. And so we said we have to join forces. And we decided from the beginning, we don't do this alone, and maybe we'll seek other foundations, hopefully one of you, to join. And we said three things are very important, because I was very skeptical, to be honest, even though I loved the presentation of Peter, but then sometimes in me comes up, okay, another talking club, another nice, meeting, the foundation meet, and they have beautiful food and everything is nice. And we have social meeting, but what is the outcome at the end of the day? What is the added value? So I think it's so much about unlikely alliances. So this is one very important thing. It's not just about alliances to have a self-help, to build a self-help group, which is sometimes important, but really for impact, I'm not sure. So no talking club, outside of the bubble. And that's tricky, because I think even when you build a sector or a community arts network, the concern is that you're still building another bubble, you're still building another silo, and that's what we don't want. So we really want to reach out, but you will hear more about it. And the third thing, and this is for me the most important, it's cause first and cause second. It's not about, wow, Porticus Foundation is in the lead of the most biggest global something. I'm really not interested in that. If we are not finally come up with impact, maybe bring in some more money, as we just more resources. And if we are not capable to do so, I think we should stop. So that's why we decided we do this as a 3 years pilot, and we will evaluate. We have some criteria, and if we're not successful, we should go back. We are not investing into something that we look cool and that we are the founder of something that's not interesting. Either we're serving those institutions, we're serving the cause as such, or we have to leave it. So this is my short introduction, and now I hand it over to Csaba and Anis, and they will talk a bit more and in more detail about it. But of course, I'm quite happy, but I'm happy if whenever you have questions, come back and also join if you're interested. It's not a lonely endeavor only with Hitler Foundation. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And so basically where we started, really just picking up where Werner left off, and you saw that from the mapping, there was a latency of a network. There was a field with many distributed players, but still the idea was, the biggest question was, why try to create a network at all? Really, I mean, is there any purpose? So we were thinking of a network not as something that is given and we try to make an impact through it or out of it, but the original question was, why do this at all? Especially given the original ambition or aspiration, which is really about tapping into the full potential of arts to really make meaningful impact and in the cause of a more just and inclusive society. And we thought that we would start with giving you a little bit of a mapping of how we went about this whole thing. So first, we really needed to understand whether or not there is a need for such a thing. And as Werner mentioned, when we reached out, when we brought together stakeholders, we tried to understand the nature of the ecosystem, and we understood how diverse and fragmented the field is. We also got to the point, what Werner mentioned, that connection and visibility beyond funding are things that seem to be lacking the most. And there we started to get a hint that that really coming up and trying to co-create a network would be something that is really useful. So we ended up with the backing of Corticus and Hilti, which really was important in terms of resources, legitimacy, and the underlying principles of which Werner mentioned a few. We actually got to a mandate that was about really focusing on enablement and advocacy around the field. And what we would like to talk more about is, based on these, really go into a little bit of detail how we try to operationalize this and in which direction we're seeking impact. And we would exactly like to start in this sense, and I'm really happy we had Mags and Peter's talk yesterday, because it just reinforced our feeling how important meaning in bringing together a network is. In other words, we really had to start by kind of exploring and defining what we care about and why we care about. Why really we think that arts and network can be important given today's context. Also, we understood from the beginning, with such a great ambition, that we're not going to be able to do it alone. So we started in the spirit of this ancient African proverb, and I think most of you know this. So usually what we get is kind of a half agreeing, half resigned shrug. Okay, we know this, but how does that really apply to us today? And we understood that really figuring out the why does point us to making sure that we really have a grasp on the context. In what world are we seeking to make impact, and why? And this is where we came to this idea of today being probably, the most fitting metaphor would be after the end of history, in the sense that you probably remember Francis Fukuyama wrote this book in 1989. And in that, he basically proclaimed the end of history. We thought progress has triumphed, the internet was born, the Berlin Wall came down, and all that. All that remained was ironing out a few details, drive technological progress, and the twin stars of liberal democracy and market economy will light our way into a future of wealth and freedom. But only a couple of decades afterwards, we find ourselves in a really very different world. uncertainty and dangerous paths, and we basically have very little to go on as foundational principles and ideologies, where next and where we're going. And what we really see, especially when we come to the grand challenges of our times, is that that it really seems almost impossible to make change in any one of these areas. We can talk about poverty, climate change, social justice, any one of these, although they are systemic in themselves, but they seem to be so interconnected that that as we see, we're talking about one complex challenge with many manifestations and aspects of it. In fact, in some sense, we seem to be at a civilizational crossroads, which is deeply cultural in nature. And as such, we feel that we do need new paradigms for a networked reality and a shared destiny, which is really going a little bit beyond that that industrial paradigm that we've been involved or rooted in for actually a couple of centuries, which I mean, it has principles around efficiency, around how we view life, how we strive for impact, how we plan, how we manufacture or try manufacturing impact and results. But as we see now, with complexity, with the pace of change, all that, our reality and especially our grand challenges have become different in nature. So all in all, the way we summarize this is that one of the greatest obstacles, if not the greatest, in meeting today's grand challenges is that they are complex, interconnected, and emergent by their nature, while the tools we use really to deal with them are specialized, targeted, and work in silos. And that's a mismatch. And that explains to some extent why it seems so really hard and elusive to generate systemic change we seem to be so much in need of. And this is where actually arts and networks come into the picture, as we see. For one, arts can be fitting tools for this kind of reality and challenges, because they can, if they are used right, they can actually mirror the nature of challenges. They can actually deal with complexity and emergence and interconnectedness by their very nature. And art can come into the picture in many cases as something that is kind of a neutral ground, but also something that can be a bridge builder, that can help us transcend qualitative and systemic boundaries, really, whether on a personal level or on a social level, because it has the capacity, that in this way, we see that arts today can have a unique role, in fact, to some extent, a vital responsibility, because it addresses crucial bottlenecks. And as such, on the other hand, a transformative opportunity to try to change how we relate and to arts and how we integrate it, because arts power really resides exactly in the qualitative changes, in transcending boundaries, in helping us exercise our moral imagination, to reframe questions, to give birth to hope, to help us reimagine tomorrow, or engage with challenges as communities in a very much individualistic society. Also, not to mention the potential of making impact that goes beyond just trying to communicate information. So that is kind of the meaning that led us to the idea of creating a community arts network, in which we hoped to kind of merge a poetic mission with a realistic platform. And that leads us to the next element. Really, how do we build an infrastructure of doing this? what is it that we can build as frameworks, as systems, as architecture, infrastructure. So we started from the basic. Well, we actually ended up with after about half a year that the way to kind of go about this, and this is a little bit echoes what Meg was talking about, to create clusters around causes, smaller groups around causes that people really care about. So our basic idea was that we can grow beyond the once provocative and revolutionary idea of arts for art's sake. Not that that such independence and freedom is outdated, far from it, really. But we can, even keeping this, can use arts to meaningfully serve important causes. And this has two different layers. One that is about directly employing arts for social impact, but there is a deeper layer which is about understanding those qualities that are present when true arts, and of course we need to define that probably through these, true arts has when engaging with the world and ourselves. And that can manifest itself in a multidisciplinary way in all sorts of aspects of our society. So we built around this a framework that is about partnerships for impact for various causes but this is by no means a final list, but this is a starting kind of framework and structure to create these clusters, so it's more targeted and more relevant to people. And we started first with Arts for Climate and then Arts for Education and Empowerment, and when we see just incredible traction when around all these. But we also understood that we need this infrastructure to support such a framework of causes. And we also got to the understanding that, in fact, we're talking about three interconnected networks. One was about what we called collaborative network of causes that are basically hubs and drivers of synergic causes. And we're talking about the collaboration of them, where there is no leader, rather kind of a more decentralized system of synergic causes in a mutually supportive system. We also understood that this need to be supported, enabled by a power table of funders and enablers. And there is also something that is kind of a larger, looser, multidisciplinary network of those who understand and embrace the idea that arts or artfulness in their respective fields can actually make a difference. And all this comes together into something that we called, as kind of referring back to Werner, an unlikely alliance. Because it is very much, I think, in the power of art to help us bring together and create such unlikely alliances. Going through that, if we're talking about a different way of organizing things, not such an industrial driven way of setting up structures, then the operations of how these networks work are different in some sense as well. So the basic idea there was that we would like to help the members of the network in what they are doing, by bringing arts to the table as a useful, practical, and powerful tool for those particular causes that the members of the network are involved in, to further that, to enable what they are doing, and not to draw attention away from it. And so the idea was that we wanted to set up a system where we become nodes in each other's network, where there is basically no central node. There is a shared purpose, but multiple focus, and where we're looking for impact through alignment and synergy, really. And the way we understood our role is that we need to build and manage infrastructure and facilitate collaboration and cross-pollination. So this is basically regarding functionalities where we arrived at, how to set up what we actually do. And in the middle is really creating the platforms. And around these, the platforms being narrative, digital, brand, all of these. And of course, we talked a little bit about the network building, but there are other components of enablement and advocacy in it. Short, more targeted bursts of action and innovation, the communications part, the digital hub, the advocacy, and building a relevant knowledge and collaboration hub that is focused on interface, actionability, usability, and all that. And finally, all this required a unique approach in this sense, which is really more like that of a gardener, which works with life and evolution and plans for it. So the idea is how we balance focus and consistency with the idea of being flexible and agile and being able to work as evolution and change happens, which is a little bit goes against the whole idea of destination planning with a predefined destination and then just doing everything to get there, even if the context changes in the meanwhile. So it is really rather evolution with a purpose. And we understood, and again, I'm referring back to Meg's comments about it all being about relationships and how we can hopefully shape and form that by our intent, by our behavior, and the frameworks we set up. And finally, what Werner mentioned, it is always really very difficult to resist the gravitational pull of being of it all somehow becoming about us as the hopeful vehicle of change, as opposed to the change we're seeking itself. So we made that into a principle, and we're focusing on that, trying to keep that in mind as we go forward. And with that, I would like to pass it on to Anis to talk about how we started with activating all this based on the meaning and using these infrastructures.
Thank you, Csaba. With this gardening approach in mind, Khan wanted to illustrate this ecosystem with an equitable representation, as you can see here, a moving sphere with diverse players. Csaba, if you can go to the next slide.
Yeah, just didn't work, sorry.
And if we can have the turning sphere, perfect. This sphere is for me the example of what Peter was saying yesterday about the impact-oriented networks, with the loosely structured sets of autonomous and diverse actors seeking to create social impact. And it's true that we have in Cannes some strong ties as well as weak ties. And it's also true that we have to go from a centralized vision to a decentralized one. In the search of generating impacts in new ways, Cannes reimagines arts for democracy, education, hope, well-being, and climate. Now, I want to take you to some of the stories we have been part of in each of them. Under what Csaba was mentioning as collaborative network of causes, we have the different arts for clusters. These are either intersector or cross-sector. For the Arts for Climate, Cannes has supported the visual artist Olafur Eliasson and his digital app called Earth Speaker. It's a German EU presidency-funded project with the objective to give and amplify the voices of children and deliver messages to the public decision makers in relation to the future of the planet. Cannes facilitated collaborations between Earth Speaker and youth empowerment programs across Europe within the field of environment, with young activists, for example, but also those that are not directly related to environment, when we have connected them with many schools. We're also partnering with TED and Leaders Quest initiative called Countdown, and have activated a few artistic features. The 10 Artists in 10 Cities Arts Installations project with fine acts, a photography open call with climate visual that will start at the beginning of 2021, and a lullaby for the Earth concept with Carnegie Hall that we also want to put into motion at the beginning of 21. We also started a partnership with a major EU knowledge and innovation community, Climate Kick, and are discussing with stakeholders of important European cities in their urban renovation plans in order to bring communities and arts in the picture. Additionally, Cannes will participate in a few international conferences to advocate for the arts. A few examples for 2021, the Learning Planet Festival with CRI Paris and the UNESCO in January, the Entitled Festival in June, the TED Summit in October on countdown and climate change, and the COP26 in November with the UN. For the Arts for Hope, with an open call, how can you bring joy to others? The Global Ode to Joy campaign started a month ago and will culminate on Beethoven's 250th anniversary in December 2020. We've partnered cultural institutions in all 6 continents who are all connected to YouTube and Google Arts and Culture platforms with grassroots, multidisciplinary organizations. For well-being, we feel that this topic is going to be one of the major one after the pandemic. And we want to have a role in bringing the art not as a decoration, but as part of the solution. Cannes is co-leading curation and programming for the Wellbeing Summit in Bilbao. And we also love to work with Gerald, and now you understand why, and how a good warm-up can change your day. Business, we've been part of the Imperative 21 group with visual artist Aaron Huey and Amplifier platform to create a global campaign featured on the New York Times, and there was a gigantic representation of the artwork on the NASDAQ screen in Times Square. We're also bringing together artists and the big corporations of the B team, everything powered by the Ford Foundation. Education, we're connecting the Academy for Impact Through Music with other social change through music projects around the world to have a global movement on teachers training and a holistic approach on education. We're also connecting the Academy to other youth empowerment programs not directly related to music to reflect our cross-pollination principle. On the second key group in our Unlikely Alliance, namely the Artful Changemakers, Cannes has commissioned a research center in the US at Brandeis University and the Impact Group to write a useful document that would allow all the grassroots organizations to show the role, the value, and the impact of arts in our society. And of course, we'll make this resource available on our upcoming platform. Last key group is the Funder Circle. Enabling the sector is a must for Cannes, but what is equally important is advocacy. And this is why we are present in the power tables, where the platforms such as TED, international events such as the World Economic Forum or the upcoming COP26, but also collaborating with the Vatican or the UN. We also work closely with more foundations and philanthropic circles, as we are, for example, today. Digressing from these examples of what we've been doing so far, I want to give you more information on the structure of 2 of our Arts for series, as I believe this could be of interest to many of you, directly or indirectly. How did we start the Arts for Climate impact-oriented network? We are creating an Arts for Climate movement where artists from all disciplines, cultural institutions from every part of the globe, bridge builders, policymakers, festivals, digital platforms, and foundations meet and take some time to think of how we can create impact together. We have 3 overarching thematic threads to start things off. One, we feel are both crucially important and also have great potential for arts to be a real game changer. One is changing as community. The narrative today is rather individualistic and focuses on individual responsibility and decisions. If we really mean to change, we need to figure out how to inspire together as communities. And arts can be a transformative catalyst for this in a multitude of ways. 2, the impact beyond information. In other words, impact is about more than just information. We humans are guided by our emotions just as such, if not more than our intellect. So if we want to convince people, we need to impact both hearts and minds. We need to engage and be experiential, go beyond making convincing arguments supported by sound data. And arts can do so much in this regard if we can smartly activate it. 3, reimagine tomorrow. Today, the power and relevance of imagining something different, not just an improvement, of dreaming a new world, not just thinking out of the box, cannot be overstated. This is the fuel for finding a new path, new faith, and shaping a truly sustainable, desirable, and viable future. We're focusing activations in 4 domains: building a knowledge hub to help the arts world with easily accessible, usable, rich, and credible climate-related content, a collaboration hub to help connect the arts world with climate-focused institutions, activists, and businesses for information and collaboration. We play an active role in funding and collaborative funding with an impact focus through and facilitate a movement through community, innovation labs, branding, and communications. From several breakout rooms last week and yesterday, I can tell that many of you have a close interest in education. On the same approach as the Art for Climate, we want to bring a meaningful twist in the Art for Education because we know how important education is in our societies. The first steps are defining who the actors are in the field. We'll approach the core group of multidisciplinary co-creators, ask them questions about how they imagine the future, considering the past and current challenges. What are the key issues and bottlenecks in education? How and where can arts help? We're having first conversations with experienced partners in the field. The Academy for Impact Through Music, powered by the Hilti Foundation, with gathering 10 social action through music programs all around the world, the International Teaching Artists Conference and their 4,000 members, the CRI Paris, who is a network of 140 organizations working in the field of education, science, and arts, Crear Vale la Pena, an amazing Latin American foundation working with grassroots organizations based in Argentina, and Masterpiece, a global peace movement inspiring and mobilizing thousands of youth to transform conflict through the soft power of music, arts, sport, and play. All these experts are being introduced to business leaders, policymakers, scientists and engineers, schools and universities, as well as foundations. We always talk about impact, but what for? In our perspective, we see this into 4 aspects: perception, value, and integration of arts, emergence of a systemic alternative, exponential impact for individual players and causes, and growing community engagement and synergy. You remember our first question: what does this mean today for us? We can only bring another quote to answer that question, very much in the spirit of networks and artfulness, and in the line of what Meg was teaching us yesterday with her, whatever the problem, community is the answer. The quote is, solving the world's biggest problems takes ensembles, not soloists. To us now, the question becomes, can we together form an ensemble out of a collection of soloists? Thank you.